Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive into one of the most fascinating aspects of medicine that, you probably never really think about: the words themselves.
Right? Like, have you ever wondered why doctors say myocardial infarction instead of, well, a heart attack? Or why rhinoplasty means nose job? It's so specific.
Yeah, it is. And, medical terminology, it might seem like an intimidating maze of complex words today. I mean, it certainly did to me when I first started out.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. But its history, it's really quite fascinating. It spans over 2,500 years of human knowledge and cultural exchange.
Yeah, from ancient Greek physicians like Hippocrates, who gave us foundational terms like pneumonia and arthritis, to Roman scholars who then, Latinized medical language. Our modern medical vocabulary is essentially a living museum of human discovery. It really is.
It truly is. And today we're going on a journey through time, actually, to explore how medical terminology evolved from simple observations to a truly sophisticated global language that, unites healthcare professionals worldwide.
We'll discover why Latin became the universal foundation, how different civilizations contributed to our medical vocabulary, and, why understanding this history really matters more than you might think.
So, our story, it really begins in ancient Greece, right? Around the 5th century BC with the father of medicine himself, Hippocrates.
Yeah, Hippocrates. And what's interesting is the Greeks, they didn't just practice medicine, they truly revolutionized how we think and talk about the human body. I mean, they were the first to systematically observe, categorize, and actually name medical conditions using really precise language.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, just take the word diagnosis. It comes from the Greek dia, which means, through, and gnosis, meaning knowledge. They literally created the concept of looking through knowledge to understand a disease.
Right, that's it. And similarly, prognosis, right? It combines pro, which is before, and gnosis, knowledge. So predicting through knowledge, it's so logical.
It really is. And Hippocrates and his followers, they gave us countless terms that we still use today, like pneumonia comes from pneumon, meaning lung, and arthritis, right, from arthron, meaning joint.
Yeah, and even anatomy itself, that derives from ana, meaning up, and tome, cutting. So literally meaning to cut up, which reflects how Greeks learned about the body through dissection. They were quite systematic, weren't they?
Incredibly systematic. And, they also created that four humors theory: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And we still use related terminology today, even though the theory itself is, well, not accurate anymore.
Yeah, I mean, melancholy literally means black bile, and phlegmatic refers to someone dominated by phlegm. So while we know those theories were incorrect now, the precision of that Greek medical language, it established a template for scientific discourse that, it persists today.
It really does. And they also gave us those anatomical directional terms that we use constantly every day in healthcare, like superior and inferior, anterior and posterior.
Yes, and these weren't just random choices. They reflected a really logical system for describing the human body in space. And that systematic approach to naming, it would become the cornerstone of all future medical terminology.
So that systematic approach, it just laid the groundwork for the next big shift, which was when the Romans came in. When they conquered Greece, they didn't just take their territory, they really absorbed and systematized all that knowledge.
And this is where figures like Galen, right? Galen of Pergamon, who lived in the 2nd century CE, really comes into play. He was that crucial bridge between Greek innovation and Roman organization. Right. And it's fascinating because while Galen himself was Greek. He wrote primarily in Greek, but also in Latin, and his works were then translated and preserved in Latin throughout the entire Roman Empire. This is how Latin really started its journey to becoming the universal language of medicine.
And the Romans, I mean, they were master administrators. They applied that same skill set, to medical knowledge. They created the first medical schools, established standards for medical practice, and most importantly for us, they really standardized medical terminology in Latin.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember, too, that Roman military medicine really drove a lot of that innovation. I mean, they needed precise, clear communication to treat battle injuries effectively, right? You can't be vague when someone's bleeding out.
No, absolutely not. And Latin, it just offered several advantages over Greek for medical terminology. First, its grammatical structure, it allowed for incredibly precise descriptions. I mean, Latin's case system and complex word formation rules meant that relationships between body parts, conditions, treatments, everything could be expressed with almost mathematical precision.
Yeah, that's huge. And second, as the language of the Roman Empire, Latin, it provided a common tongue across these really diverse populations. So you had a standard language for medical communication.
Exactly. And if you think about how Latin root words allow for systematic terminology even today, like cardiac for heart-related, right? That gives us cardiology, cardiopathy, cardiovascular, dozens of other precise terms.
Or hepatic, right? Liver-related. That similarly spawns hepatitis, hepatology, hepatocellular. I mean, it's amazing. This systematic approach just meant that once you learned the roots, you could decode hundreds, literally hundreds of medical terms.
Yeah, I mean, it's still what we teach, isn't it? And what's really wild is that the fall of the Roman Empire, it didn't diminish Latin's role in medicine. It actually strengthened it. Because as Europe fragmented into all these different languages and cultures, Latin remained the language of learning, the church, and, crucially, of medicine.
So after the fall of Rome, you'd think medical knowledge just vanished, right? But that's where the story takes a really interesting turn, because much of that medical knowledge might have been lost if not for Islamic scholars.
Oh, absolutely. This period, what we call the Islamic Golden Age, from about the 8th to the 13th centuries, saw just unprecedented medical advancement and significant linguistic contributions too. They were the ones who really preserved, translated, and then expanded upon those Greek and Roman texts.
Yeah, I mean, physicians like Al-Razi, Ibn Sina, who we often know as Avicenna, and Al-Zarawi, they weren't just preserving ancient knowledge, they were revolutionizing it. They established the first hospitals, created the first medical schools with standardized curricula, and for our story, most importantly, they contributed hundreds of terms that we actually still use today.
And this is fascinating because a lot of words we might automatically think are Latin, they actually have Arabic origins. Like alcohol, for example, comes from alcohol, and originally it referred to a fine powder, but then later on it was extended to refined spirits.
Or elixir. That comes from elixir, which was the philosopher's stone, and syrup. That's from sharab. Even sugar, azúcar. So many common terms, really.
Yeah, I mean, the Arabic contribution goes far beyond just, individual words. Islamic physicians were the first to systematically describe many conditions. Like Al-Razi, he provided the first clinical descriptions of smallpox and measles, and his Arabic terminology for these conditions influenced Latin translations for centuries.
And even Sina's canon of medicine, that remained a standard medical textbook in European universities, all the way up until the 17th century, which is just incredible to think about.
It truly is. And when these Arabic texts were translated back into Latin during the 12th century Renaissance, it created this just fascinating linguistic fusion, translators had to find Latin equivalents for Arabic medical terms, often creating new Latin words or adapting existing Arabic ones.
So this is why, many medical terms have this really layered history. Greek roots, Roman systematization, Arabic innovation, and then medieval Latin adaptation. It's quite the mix.
Exactly. And the University of Salerno, established around the 9th century, it became the first medieval medical school. And it standardized much of this mixed terminology. So students from across Europe would come to study medicine in Latin using texts that combined Greek, Roman, and Arabic knowledge.
So after all that incredible fusion, the Renaissance really just brought a whole new kind of revolutionary change, didn't it? I mean, for the first time since antiquity, physicians actually started dissecting human bodies again.
Yeah, and this was huge because what they found often, contradicted those ancient texts that everyone had been relying on. And this created what you could really call a linguistic crisis. Like, how do you name something that the ancients never even described?
Exactly. And Andreas Vesalius, he's often called the father of modern anatomy. He faced this challenge head on. His 1543 masterpiece, De Humani Corporis Fabrica, that's on the structure of the human body, it corrected over 200 errors in Galen's anatomy. But more importantly for our story, Vesalius had to create really precise Latin terminology for structures that had been misunderstood or just never properly described before.
And this period, it really established a principle that still governs medical terminology today. New discoveries require new, systematically constructed names. Like when William Harvey described blood circulation in 1628, he couldn't rely on ancient terms because, well, the ancients didn't understand circulation. He had to create new Latin terminology that precisely described what he observed.
It really does make sense. I mean, the Renaissance also saw the birth of medical terminology as like a conscious discipline. Physicians started creating these systematic anatomical atlases with standardized names, like the 1561 Anatomical Nomenclature by Gabriele Fallopio. It established naming conventions that we actually still follow.
Yeah, like structures should be named for their shape or their function or their location, using really consistent Latin forms. It's quite amazing how that foundation was laid so early.
And this period also introduced the concept of eponymous terms, naming structures after their discoverers. So we get the fallopian tubes, the Eustachian tubes, and dozens of other structures that bear the Latinized names of these Renaissance anatomists. And while that's a bit controversial today, it really reflected that Renaissance spirit of individual achievement and scientific progress.
Yeah, I mean, by 1600, medical Latin had really evolved into something quite different from classical Latin. It incorporated Greek roots, Arabic borrowings, and all these new constructions that classical authors would never have recognized. But it remained systematically coherent and internationally understood, which was key.
So after all that incredible evolution, by the 18th and 19th centuries, it feels like there was this just unprecedented drive for standardization in medicine, right? And with that, the need for terminological precision.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you can really see the influence of things like Carl Linnaeus's binomial nomenclature system for species, which came out in 1753, that provided a model for medical taxonomy. I mean, just as every species has a precise two-part Latin name, medical conditions really started receiving these standardized Latin or Latinized designations.
That makes so much sense. And the Industrial Revolution, it really accelerated this whole process, didn't it? Medical schools were just multiplying across Europe and North America, and they were all teaching in Latin-based terminology.
Yeah, and this culminated in something huge, the 1895 Basel Nomina Anatomica. That became the first internationally agreed upon standard for anatomical terminology, establishing principles that, we actually still use today.
It's pretty wild to think about that far back. But maybe the most significant development for me anyway was the emergence of medical terminology as just a distinct academic discipline. I mean, the 1933 establishment of the International Anatomical Nomenclature Committee marked the moment when medical language became consciously managed and standardized on a global scale.
Yeah, and I think, World War II actually created an unexpected push for the standardization. Military medical personnel from different countries, they really needed to communicate precisely about injuries and treatments. And the success of things like penicillin and other breakthrough treatments, they really required exact terminology for international cooperation.
That's a great point. And then, the World Health Organization, which was established in 1948, they really made standardized medical terminology a cornerstone of global health. The International Classification of Diseases, the ICD, which was first published way back in 1893, but extensively revised post-World War II, it established standard terminology for diseases, injuries, and causes of death worldwide.
And it's still, so current. Modern medical terminology, it really follows strict rules that have been established over centuries. New terms, they have to be constructed using established roots, they follow consistent grammatical patterns, and crucially, they have to be internationally comprehensible.
Like when AIDS was first identified in 1981, the term acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, it followed those ancient principles, Each word has clear Greek or Latin etymology and a precise meaning. It's a testament to how enduring that structure is.
So, fast forward to today, right? The digital age. Medical terminology faces some new challenges, doesn't it? Oh, absolutely. I mean, electronic health records, for instance, they require these incredibly standardized coding systems like SNOMED CT, which has, over 300,000 medical concepts? And, they're all still built on that Latin-Greek foundation established 2,500 years ago. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it really is. And, it's not just EHRs. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, they depend entirely on precise, consistent terminology. I mean, when AI systems analyze medical literature or assist in diagnosis, they're relying on that systematic nature of medical language that traces all the way back to ancient Greece.
Right. That consistency is key. And even with all the new discoveries, the new terminology, it really still follows those ancient patterns.
Yeah, it does. Like, think about COVID-19. I mean, it still follows those ancient patterns. Co from corona, which is crown in Latin. V from virus, which is poison in Latin. D from disease, and 19 from 2019. It's very systematic.
It's fascinating, actually, how even cutting-edge terms like CRISPR, clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, they still use Latin and Greek roots to describe these really complex genetic phenomena.
Yeah, and the future, I think it's likely to hold continued evolution. As medicine becomes more personalized and molecular, terminology will need to describe increasingly precise concepts. But the foundation, it's going to remain that systematic approach, pioneered by the ancient Greeks and then formalized by the Romans.
So the next time you hear a doctor use what seems like incomprehensible medical jargon, just remember that you're listening to a language that represents 2,500 years of human discovery, cultural exchange, and scientific progress.
Yeah, every prefix, every root, every suffix, it carries the wisdom of Greek physicians, Roman systematizers, Islamic scholars, Renaissance anatomists, and, even our modern researchers. It's really incredible when you think about it that way.
It really is. I mean, medical terminology, it's not just about memorizing difficult words. It's about participating in humanity's oldest continuous scientific conversation.
Exactly. I mean, when a medical student in Tokyo learns the same anatomical terms as someone in, London or Lagos, they're connected not just to each other, but to Hippocrates, Galen, Ibn Sina, Vesalius, and countless others who built this remarkable linguistic legacy. It's really something.
Understanding this history doesn't just help healthcare professionals master complex terminology. It reveals how medicine itself has evolved as a truly international endeavor, with each root, prefix, and suffix telling the story of humanity's endless quest to understand and heal the human body.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the fascinating history of medical terminology.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive in the history of medical terminology, please like and subscribe for more explorations into the surprising histories behind the things we often take for granted.